From the headquarters of Tell Us Your English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. We begin with Syria, where an attack from the United States and its allies looks imminent. U.S. President Donald Trump warned Russia of a missile attack on Syria in response to an alleged chemical attack in the town of Douma at the weekend. In a series of early morning tweets, Trump responded to Russia's promise to shoot down any missiles fired at Syria and possibly target their launch sites. "Get ready, Russia," he wrote. "They will be coming nice, new, and smart." He went on, "Our relationship with Russia is worse than it has ever been, and that includes the Cold War. There is no reason for this. Russia needs us to help with their economy, and we need all nations to work together. Stop the arms race." Reacting to Trump's tweet, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said strikes should be aimed at terrorists and not at the Syrian government. In a Facebook post, she wrote, "Smart missiles should fly towards terrorists and not towards the lawful government, which has been fighting international terrorism on its territory for several years." She also said that a U.S. missile strike could destroy any evidence of an alleged chemical weapons attack in the Syrian town of Douma. And for more on a possible intervention in Syria from the United States, let's go live to our correspondent in Washington, Jorge Gestoso. Jorge, what can you tell us about Trump's tweet? Do you think it means that a major military intervention is imminent?
Well, maybe that the most representative situation here in Washington at this moment is that the Pentagon is saying that the discussions are ongoing, but they're not giving any indications of what's going to be the next step. Definitely that separates of the rhetoric of Donald Trump through Twitter, his usual way to communicate. And most definitely it has been widely discussed and most definitely criticized by Republicans and Democrats that he's declaring war by Twitter, something that is absolutely unusual. It's considered irresponsible for the people of their own country, for the people of their own party. And of course, especially the Democrats are saying that he does not have the authority to declare a war to another country without the approval of the Congress. So there's also that issue. What is going on? Mostly the perception is that given the fact that Donald Trump is saying that he's consulting with his partners like the United Kingdom, France, and Israel, they're going to be make an agreement.
Okay, so we're having some
of what will be the next step.
Okay, and Jorge, if that happens, what will military conflict mean for Syria and the region?
That could be a very, very difficult situation because given the fact that Russia and Iran has committed themselves to defend Syria, that could be a possible war with unprecedented proportions, because behind the U.S., as I was mentioning to you, is the United Kingdom, France, and Israel. Behind Syria, we have at least the Soviet Union and eventually Iran. So that could escalate in a very, very dangerous situation.
Yes, it does look like that situation could escalate and not be good for Syria or the rest of the region. Thank you so much for that update. We've been speaking to our Washington correspondent, Jorge Gestoso. We continue in Brazil. The Federal Supreme Court has postponed a debate on the imprisonment of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva for 5 days. The decision was made after the National Ecological Party asked for more time for the lawyers in the case to study the process. The courts could declare Lula's detention unconstitutional. Meanwhile, the judge in charge of Lula's case has vetoed any visits to the former Brazilian president. On Tuesday, 9 governors and representatives of 9 different political parties were denied entry to the complex where Lula has been detained since Monday in Curitiba. A judge ruled that the former Brazilian president should not have any special privileges in prison. And still in Brazil, at least 23 people have died after trying to escape from a prison in Berlin in the north of the country on Tuesday. Among the victims is a prison guard, five inmates and 15 others who allegedly helped the prison break. The Brazilian military police were able to stop the riot and seize firearms. The prison, Santa Isabel, has 659 inmates, despite having capacity for just 432. The Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has confirmed that he will not attend the Summit of the Americas taking place in Lima, Peru on April 13th and 14th. Maduro says he prefers to remain in the country with his people. He lamented the attitude of the Peruvian government that withdrew his invitation in February. He said the summit is a waste of time and it's not focusing on the topics of interest for Venezuela, and that the government is not assuring the maximum security for the Venezuelan delegation.
I have decided I am not going to the Summit of the Americas in Lima. I am going to stay with the people of Venezuela on the 13th and the 14th, where we commemorate the defeat of the coup of 2002. I am staying in Venezuela. That's my decision.
With less than 2 months until Venezuela's presidential election, the country's National Electoral Council is busy implementing various measures ahead of the big day. Freddie Gillingham has the latest.
Representatives from both government and opposition parties are complying with all instructions ahead of the elections. They sat side by side at the CNE headquarters in Caracas to form a high-level group which will monitor the electoral process. The group, which will comprise of members from different parties, must be formed as part of constitutional guarantees agreement signed by presidential candidates on March 2nd. Ideally, it will force all sides of the political spectrum to work together on any issues which may arise in the electoral process.
We know of a sector of the Venezuelan opposition that seeks to delegitimize the CNE and the 20th May elections. And to confront all this, it is necessary that the articulation of the democratic sectors drive this process as a way to resolve the differences that the Venezuelan society is experiencing.
However, despite these efforts, foreign condemnation grows. Argentina's President Mauricio Macri joined a growing band of countries accusing Venezuela of fraudulent elections before they have even taken place.
We are not going to validate the electoral result of May 20th or whatever date it is, because that election has no worth. However much Maduro insults me, we are not going to recognize him as a democratic president because there has been no democracy in Venezuela for a long time.
Despite this, some of Venezuela's political parties still believe in the democratic path, even if the US and their allies don't believe them. Freddie Gillingham, Telesur, Caracas.
Trade unions, campaigners and indigenous movements from all over Latin America have converged on Lima, Peru for the People's Summit. Participants have come to voice their concerns to the leaders who will take part in the 8th Summit of the Americas.
Register social groups.
If all of us, social organizations who represent workers and the people, are not in there, then who is? They do not represent us.
At the same time, representatives of the region's indigenous communities got together to draft a list of demands that will be handed to heads of states participating in the summit. Their main concern is their people's ongoing displacement, especially in countries living under neoliberal administrations.
When you migrate, you lose your knowledge about your own land, knowledge linked to biodiversity, which can't be replaced. Younger generations continue to lose this knowledge, and they're also losing their language and their culture.
Corruption is another topic of great importance for indigenous communities. Experts agree that corruption is one of the main reasons why governments have allowed communities in the Amazon and the Andes to be stripped of their own lands.
We want to put an end to laws that endanger people's rights, such as allowing foreign companies to take our resources. People no longer have control over their own land. They're being evicted without notice.
Most leaders have yet to confirm their attendance at the summit. There are expected to be more cancellations announced, like that of U.S. President Donald Trump.
We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after a look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. An explosion in a mine in Bolivia has killed at least 7 people. The blast occurred at 4 a.m. local time, and it's believed to have been caused by the overturning and subsequent explosion of a truck transporting explosions to the mine. Bolivian President Evo Morales tweeted his condolences to the victims and their families and announced that he has ordered an investigation to clarify what happened in the tragic event. The Huanuni mine is located in the Bolivian department of Oruro, in the west of the country. In Peru, the fight between the Fujimori siblings continues. Keiko tweeted 2 messages on Tuesday evening. In the first one, the leader of the Peruvian opposition party, Popular Force, refers to her brother, Congressman Kenji Fujimori, as irresponsible and a vote buyer. In the second tweet, Keiko defends her party members, Luis Galarreta Lores Alcota and Ursula Litona, who were accused by Kenji of receiving funds from the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht. In Chile, President Sebastián Piñera's proposal to toughen immigration rules has caused outrage among pro-migrant social movements. The proposed measures are seen as discriminatory and racist because they will make it harder for Haitian migrants to stay while making it easier for Venezuelans. The new rule states that those entering the country as tourists will no longer be able to change their status. The controversial bill will go on to Congress for discussion.
This decision is about racism and discrimination. In my view, the government is making a very unfair move.
We cannot link migration with crime. We cannot stay in this mindset that dates back to the 70s. We are going back to the darkest days of the Chilean democracy.
The spiritual leader of the Mapuche people, Machi Celestino Cordova, has spent 87 days on a hunger strike in Chile, and the state of his health is now critical.
They camp outside the Temuco prison, where their leader, Machi Celestino Cordova, has spent 87 days on hunger strike. He's demanding a permit to visit his spiritual homeland, a request that has been systematically denied.
Following the government's latest refusal, we want to say that the health of the Machi is not negotiable. We are demanding his basic human right, the right to exercise the spirituality of the Liken Machi and all the Mapuche people.
We believe that denying him this possibility is an act of torture because it has led to him suffering and going on hunger strike.
The Machi Celestino is accused of carrying out an incendiary attack against the landowners Luchsinger Mackay and is being held under an anti-terrorism law. However, the evidence has not been conclusive. He has been in prison for 5 years, a period in which he has not been able to renew his spiritual commitment, a protected right in Convention 169 of the International Labour Organization.
Even if you are in prison, you should be able to exercise your cultural rights. You should be able to exercise your cultural role, which is to be a machi. And that is precisely what is forbidden. And in this particular case, the withholding of that right is like a progressive death sentence.
The Rehue, or sacred altar, is the spiritual center of the Mapuche world and is used in many Mapuche ceremonies. The Machi must go there once a year to renew his energy, an ancestral practice that is directly linked to the vital health of the Machi.
I just need 48 hours to be able to go to renew my spiritual commitment within the community at Chicaguancoco, to be able to renew my spiritual balance in my health. I am appealing for this, but I have been asking for 5 years, using the proper legal channels in a transparent and respectful way, and it has not been granted.
The medical specialists of the Intercultural Hospital in Araucanía have noted the delicate state of health of Machi Celestino Córdoba. However, the government has not given signs that they will allow him to attend this ancestral ceremony.
In Argentina, lawmakers have opened the first hearings in a historic debate to legalize abortion. The bill that could allow women to terminate a pregnancy within the first 14 weeks. Thousands of demonstrators took to the streets of Buenos Aires. Those in favor of legalization wore green bandanas and waved pro-abortion signs, while those opposed waved red flags and balloons. On the first day of the debate, doctors, lawyers, religious people, and human rights activists presented their views. More than 1,000 experts will make their case by May.
This is a public health issue that has stark statistics of women dying, thousands and thousands of women dying every year from unsafe abortions.
On Thursday, April 12, Justice Devendra Ramprasad will rule on a case that is challenging Sections 13 and 16 of the Sexual Offences Act in Trinidad and Tobago. Section 13 speaks to the act of buggery or sodomy being an offense. Although not in force, it's a law which essentially makes homosexuality illegal. The case was brought by the activist Jason Jones, and Thursday's ruling could have the potential to affect laws not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the Commonwealth Caribbean. We go live to attorney at law Leah Thompson to discuss the implications of this case. Hi Leah, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Nice to be here.
So I understand that Commonwealth law has a savings clause which effectively could limit Justice Ramprasad's ability to rule on this particular case. What kind of effect can this have on what's going to happen tomorrow on the Jones versus the Attorney General case?
Well, you're very correct. Unfortunately, there is this locally savings law clause that's found in Section 6 of the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. And what that does is any old laws that existed prior to our Constitution coming into force, those laws are still protected despite the fact that they may be unconstitutional. So the first barrier that Jason would have to, or Jason's attorneys would have to get over is whether the court is going to find that Section 13 and Section 16 are old or existing laws. And if the court does find that, then those laws would be protected by Section 6 or the savings law clause and would still have to stand despite being unconstitutional. Now,
the thing is that these laws in their current form do have the potential to infringe on people's personal, sexual, and equal protection. So surely they should be changed, right?
Yeah, that is exactly what Jason is asking the court to look at. The second part of his argument is that should the court agree with him and find that the law is in fact a new law, so it should not be protected under the Constitution. There is also the second part of the, mix, or the second barrier, is that even new laws can still stand despite their unconstitutionality if they are passed with a 3/5 majority in Parliament, which the Sexual Offences Act has been passed with. But there's also this condition that that is put, or the Constitution puts on those type of laws. And it says that those laws can only stand where they are reasonably justifiable in a society that protects the rights of its citizens. So that actually touches on the second part of Jason's argument, which is, despite the fact that it may have passed the 3/5 majority, we're asking this court to ask this question: are laws like these really justifiable? Should they stand in a society that is serious about protecting the human rights of its citizens?
Now, Jason's case is against the government, against the Attorney General. The Attorney General is named because he represents the government. How is the government defending their position in this particular case?
Well, interestingly, they have not made it about gay rights, homosexuality. Their argument really hinges on the savings law clause. They actually made that very clear in the beginning. The way they framed the case, they made it very clear that, we are a society, the Constitution protects all citizens. However, we are just in this unfortunate situation where we do have a savings law clause. If you ask the court to deal with these kind of laws, they will always meet that barrier of the savings law clause. And in fact, if a law like this is to be struck down or taken off the books, the correct means by which that should be done is via Parliament.
Okay, so having said that, I want you to focus a little bit for me. If this case goes in the way that Jason hopes, what are the possible implications for Trinidad and the Commonwealth Caribbean?
I think the implications are great. It would show not just the outside world, but really the citizens of the Caribbean, of the Commonwealth, that this region is really serious about human rights. It is serious about protecting its citizens. But I think, I just want to temper that with the reality of the court system, which is, even though we may have a judgment on Thursday, this is really just the first stage of the matter. Very likely one of the parties will, choose to appeal. The matter could then go to our Court of Appeal. And after that, there's also the option of going to the Privy Council in England. So, it is a long road ahead, but ultimately, I think if there is a ruling in Jason's favor, it's great, not just for the LGBT community, but for all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, because this affects, the human rights of all of us. It's all our human rights.
And really, really quickly, if the case doesn't go as planned, like if he doesn't get the results that he wants, you did mention earlier that he might have to take it to the Parliament. Could you briefly give me a timeline of how that can work?
At any point, the Parliament could step in and make a decision to amend the bill or discuss it in Parliament and make an amendment. I don't think that is a likely outcome. So what we're likely looking at is after the case has made its way through the courts, after it's gone through the Court of Appeal, Privy Council, depending on which way the Privy Council swings, let's say it goes against Jason, that's where the community comes in and pressure should be put on Parliament to, really take the human rights of its citizens seriously and make changes to the law at that stage.
Okay, so thank you so much, Leah, because this has been very complicated and I really appreciate you taking the time out to explain the legal steps to us. Thank you so much for joining us. We've been speaking to Leah Thompson, an attorney in Trinidad and Tobago. And we're going to head to some breaking news, some news just in a press conference. Ecuador's Minister of the Interior, Cesar Navas, has confirmed the government is investigating the authenticity of a statement reportedly issued by the armed group that kidnapped 2 Ecuadorian journalists and their driver near the border with Colombia 16 days ago. Navas said that he has also contacted authorities in Colombia and that they haven't been able to confirm who issued the communique. Navas reassured the commitment of the government to return the 2 kidnapped journalists and their driver alive and well. Facebook Chief Executive Mark Zuckerberg is in the second day of testimony before a U.S. Senate committee. In his testimony a short while ago, he said his Facebook data was included in the personal information sold to malicious third parties. Facebook faces a growing crisis of confidence among users, advertisers, employees, and investors after admitting that up to 87 million people have had their personal information harvested by Cambridge Analytica, a political consultancy company.
Senator,
a military plane has crashed in Algeria, killing hundreds of people. Here's more on that and other stories making headlines around the world.
More than 250 people have been killed in Algeria after a military plane crashed near Bofarig Air Base near the capital Algiers. The defense plane was carrying scores of military troops and was heading to the western Algerian city of Béchar. Local media have said the death toll could increase. Around 80 people have died and more than 100 are in critical condition after drinking bootleg liquor in different provinces of Indonesia. The local police say the alcohol consisted of toxic methanol. 7 suspects have been arrested. Deaths from spurious liquor consumption is frequently reported in the country.
This bootleg liquor kills a lot of people. 31 people died in Jakarta, 51 victims in West Java province, and I'm sure there are still many in other places. This is an insane situation.
The United States has removed its 6-month ban on visitors and immigrants from Central African country, Chad. The US President Donald Trump says that Chad has met key security requirements for vetting travelers. Chad has welcomed the news. Trump announced the travel ban in 2017, mainly targeting Muslim-majority nations. The ban still includes 2 Muslim-majority African countries, Libya and Somalia, along with Iran, Syria and Yemen.
So the World Wrap has taken us right to the end of this news brief, but for these and any other stories, you can find them on our website at tellustv.net/English. And you should also join us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sweeney Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
Telesur is branching out into new territories to democratize information.
It's insight into the world from a South American perspective.
We now broadcast live in English.